Hi, this is Rob Taylor, author of the article you're presumably currently reading on Tuts Plus. If you found this on YouTube, the link should hopefully be in the description below. As I wrote above, this is the final image in the sequence that I decided to take into Photoshop. I thought that it was the most interesting combination of light and expression. Instead of starting the whole thing again from scratch, which would take probably 2 hours, maybe more, I'm going to recap what I did and explain the reasoning behind each step. So here we are, looking at the import settings in Camera Raw before bringing it into Photoshop proper. Let's just start from the top. Color temperature with this many mixed light sources is a nightmare. I basically just picked one that looked about right. If we put the vibrance back up, it goes horrible, and it gets a bit too cold or a bit too warm and generally doesn't look right anywhere. So that was a general happy medium. Didn't do anything to exposure or contrast, because I used these 4 sliders here to do that part. The highlights are brought up slightly to pop just up here, slightly, without blowing out things like this, which it also covers. Shadows to bring up the details in here, obviously, and soften these shadow edges slightly. Brought the whites up this far to make all this light pop, bounce off the page or screen, as the case may be, and a little bit of blacks to finish bringing up any detail in the shadows that either the shadows doesn't cover or would take too much of and make it really noisy. The blacks digs a little deeper. I added some clarity because why not? Makes everything look better. And the vibrance, I killed the vibrance because, as I just showed you, it looks kind of gross. So that's the first page. Second page, bit of noise reduction. It makes the low light sensor noise turn slightly more analog, filmic. And that was it. So hit open image. Except I'm not going to, because I already have it open. And we're given this. Now let's see, first things first, obviously, clean up the skin. Not too much. The freckles are perfectly fine. We just want the temporary imperfections. Although I did remove that freckle right there, because it was kind of distracting, because it was so dark. I give myself a little bit of leeway. Second layer. Let's look at this. Atmospherics everywhere. This was primarily taken from this little line of flare right here. I decided I liked that, so I dialed that up to, I would say 11, but probably more like 50. I did some little rays of light coming off the bokeh to sort of emulate that, even though there isn't actually any. And I don't think bokeh can even give light rays. If I switch to the tablet, I can show you how I did those. Let's see. We're doing, essentially, you have to have a tablet for this. We're going dot, big dot. Where am I? I'm in the burn tool. Switch to brush. 100% big brush. Right, so big dot. There we go. And then hold shift. Interesting. There we go, that kind of thing. I just got this tablet, so I'm not quite used to it yet. I've only been using it a couple of days because my old one died and wasn't very good in the first place. Kept having driver issues, so it's a Wacom Bamboo and it's quite fantastic. There we go. Generally you're trying to make the light sort of wedge shape like this is. Comes in and then fades out and narrows down as it moves through the lens. So on this layer we're taking, what I did was drop the opacity way down to 10-20%, sample these kinds of colors in here, and then just do that, move it out like this, some blue. Generally I stuck to the same color as the particular bokeh ball it was coming from, but you get the general idea here. This is all just painted in atmosphere. I did all of the light streaks first, dialed them back a bit because they looked a bit over the top at first, but erased some of those, and then on top of that I did the atmospheric effects, which both helped dial back the light streaks and also gave some separation. Here you can see in the hair and the rear shoulder more recedes into the background as opposed to the main focal point of the image. Kind of works with the depth of field I'm getting here. That was again just sampling, making it a bit lighter, low opacity, and just painting it in where I thought was necessary. That's quite a lot of opacity, let's go with 5%. And then just painting it in where I felt it needed it. Wherever. Get rid of that. So that's the second layer. We now have clean skin and brightened up our background and made it more impactful and cinematic, but without distracting from the subject by dialing back its contrast levels. We've kept the color, removed the contrast. The contrast is all in here, and obviously our eyes are designed to look at contrast and are attracted towards it, so the focal point of the image remains in this area. To improve that, I added this black and white layer right here, which boosts the overall contrast quite substantially, but again maintains the relationship between the face and the background. It also brings out these bokeh balls where they were starting to get lost from the atmospherics by playing with these sliders. This one I used to brighten up this side of the face mainly. Try and even out the two sides of the face. The magenta and the red were also used for that. There was, and the blue I think as well. The blue from the flash, the speed light hit this side of the face. The yellow from the street light hit this side of the face, and they blended together with lines down here, down the center of the face. There's the magenta, and there's probably some cyan in there as well. Yeah, there it goes, right down in there. But yeah, and I set it to overlay, only 30% opacity. If it's normal, then obviously it's a desaturation layer. Set to overlay, then it boosts the contrast. It's only 30% because that is just quite a lot too much. Next, I bring in the dodge and burn, but instead of dodging and burning destructively on the background layer, I use these two curves layer. This one lightens the image, and this one darkens the image. I invert the two masks to make them all black, and then I can just paint on in white where I want the dodge and burn. The advantage of doing it this way is that A, it's non-destructive because you're doing it on an adjustment layer, and also it's adjustable at a later date if you want to increase or decrease the amount that you've dodged or burned. If the highlights aren't quite bright enough, you can increase them all. But I was happy with where it was in the first place, so that's fine. Once we've brought those two in, we get our full contrast range. I've mainly just worked with what's in the image, as I prefer to. I tend not to relight images, because it's difficult and time consuming. I've brightened up the background a lot, as you can see in here. Right around this area and this area, I've made it glow. Almost in a sort of red carpet kind of way. Add a little bit of glamour to the night, as we like to do. And I've lightened up certain sections of hair and some of the eyes, particularly the irises. It lost a little, it was lacking some punch without some lightness in the eyes. And of course you can use dodge and burn also to soften up the shadows slightly wherever possible. The burn, I darkened the road because it was strange that it was so bright, given that there's no light coming from there. And then I also went over things like the eyelashes, the lips, some of the darker areas of hair, just boost that contrast, eyebrows. This sort of like digital makeup, but not quite. Just increasing the local contrast levels to make sure that we're not losing our focal point of the image. Since this is a portrait, the focal point is ultimately the eyes. Next layer is, as you can see from the grey, a sharpening layer based on high pass. This is done fairly simply, as you can tell from the name of the layer, by duplicating the background, filter, high pass. This only brings out the details unless you set the radius too high, and then it's kind of pointless. Looks horrible HDR. But playing with the radius levels allows you to fine tune exactly what you want to bring out. I generally have it set somewhere around there. Usually 5 to 10 pixels is good. Sometimes, if you want very specific areas, you can set it around 2 or 3, particularly in the eyes, where it always comes out anyway. So, we bring that in. Doesn't do too much, because I've set it to hard light. Opacity 78%. If we boost it back up, the eyes get a little bit crunchy. I don't know if you can see that, but I also have, if we remove the layer mask on it, suddenly everything gets a lot more crunchy, and you can see why I've masked it off. I've really only done the texture in the lips, the eyes and eyelashes around there, again protecting that focal point of the image, and some of the hair around here because it's also in focus at f2.8 within the depth of field, so it would be weird if it was a different sharpness level to me. Your mileage may vary. And then final curves layer, nice and simple S-curve. Just the final grade on the image, if you will. Bring some of that cinematicness back. Cinematism. I don't know what the word is. But it brings out these light streaks quite nicely. Looks a bit like spotlights shining onto our our starlet on the red carpet. In which case you can read into that expression what you will. And that's it. It's fairly straightforward. I haven't really done a whole lot. I didn't go nuts with the post-processing, even though it may look like it. Just bring out the vision I originally had for it. Some people see in Photoshop. I often tend to. So, yeah, I'll dump you back in the article now.